It's a very good, close collection rate. And then you can see in 2021, this year, we're expecting that you'd receive about $2,540,000. The reason for the increase, there's some development, but also you have quite a few taxpayers that have property tax abatements. So as those abatements roll off, that new assessed value you capture and collect the revenue from that. In 2019, you created a 2019 allocation area. That consists of where the Shell building is located. So again, it was created in July of 2019 and has a 25-year life. And that 25-year clock doesn't start until you issue debt that has TIF pledged toward it. Next page, same thing for the area that we just created a few months ago, the NICEPAC allocation area. Again, it will have a 25-year life. You can always end it sooner, but by statute, it can last no longer than 25 years. But again, that clock doesn't start until you issue bonds. Page 5 lists the obligations of bonds and debt obligations that you have in the original area. And the first one listed there is the taxable lease installment contract, and that's what you did in 2019 for the Shell building. There's $4,175,000 of principal outstanding, and if it goes to maturity, if you don't pay it off early, it'll end in 2039. And the only thing that's paying that back is the tax increment from the area, which is the case for all three of these obligations. The item there in the middle is the 2021 refunding bonds, which actually just closed today. So those are the bonds that were originally issued in 2014. In the last couple of months, we've talked about those to refinance those at the lower interest rate. There was $10,760,000 of principal outstanding originally. The interest rates range from 2% to 4%. We refinanced those to a flat 2.85% out to 2039. We are also able to reduce the debt service reserve, so that's the amount of money set aside and set in an account, really doing nothing, just for emergencies. We were able to reduce that from $1 million to $470,000, so it freed up over $500,000 of cash that you could apply towards the refinancing. So with that basically reduced your annual payment by about $75,000. So it's giving you basically $75,000 more funds available to use for projects that benefit the area. And the present value over that life of the bonds was about $245,000. Adam, if you want to add anything, I know you're very instrumental. A lot of emails going back and forth for the last week or so in closing, but
yeah, we just to reiterate, closed actually this morning. All the funds were transferred. The 2014 bonds have been defeased, and I mean, the big thing is we have that now annual debt service savings going forward. Yep, thank you, Jason.
Mm-hmm. And then the third obligation there, as you know, is the 2010 SRF bonds that the town issued. Again, so the town utility issued that bond, but part of the payment is being paid from the tax increment, and the reason for that was to help keep utility rates down. And that's $300,000 a year is paid from the tax increment area. Page 6, just one of the requirements is kind of identify the projects, some of the projects that you've used tax increment for, and what you plan to use it for in the future to help demonstrate to the public. So these are some of the projects, and you've done a lot more than this, as you know, but here's just some of the larger projects that the Redevelopment Commission has used the tax increment for to benefit the area and the town. I don't know, Chelsea, if you want to go through any of these in particular.
I was going to say I should have added to the list the grant with the schools, especially since we have
the schools
present. Yes, that was last year. And we're excited about that. We need to have you or Jake come and give us an update as far as where things are at.
He's in office, and I say he's an academic program.
Understood. That sounds more fun. No offense, Jason, but that sounds good.
Page 7, another requirement is just kind of put together a budget, illustrative budget. So working with Chelsea, we put this together. So the top line just shows your estimated tax increment that we're projecting based upon 2020 information. And as you can see, as I said earlier, we're anticipating that to grow. This is just from abatements rolling off. So if there's any new construction that's, being built right now or anticipated, that's going to be above and beyond what we're showing right here. So this is just facilities that are in the ground with abatements rolling off. So right now, again, 2.5 million is what we're estimating this year, and by 2025, we're estimating that to grow to over 2.8. So then you see your three debt service payments there. We've allowed some money for professional service fees, and then you can see we've also allowed some expenses for some capital projects, just general infrastructure, economic development projects, and then some gateway improvements. A lot of these are just kind of placement holders. Some are kind of underway, but some of these are just kind of placement holders for things that you may anticipate approving later this year as they come before you.
Two things I would note specifically, the increase in professional services, I added an increase in this year because legal fees increased due to the NICEPAC negotiations and all the bonds associated with that. So I wanted that to be reflective. So that's why that's higher this year and not projected to be after that. Also, for the economic development projects, that 850 is specific to the NICEPAC deal. So I just wanted to specify those.
And you can see that, in 2021, there is a negative amount, but that's because you do have some cash on hand where you've accumulated over the years, and which is, a positive thing because, again, you haven't done a bond issue since 2014 because you've had funds on hand to pay for things and you haven't had to incur additional, fees to issue a bond and pay for that interest. So, and again, this is just more for illustration. It's nothing that you've actually, approved, but just showing that you do have the funds to cover quite a few major infrastructure improvements if you so desire. And page 8 are some of those projects that you either talked about formally or informally that you would potentially like to use future TIF for. High Street path and lighting, just future economic development projects, and then future gateway planning for the town. And then the last couple of schedules is this last requirement that we talk about is showing what the impact of the allocation area has on overlapping tax units. So this is a graph that we just kind of put together that I know I've gone through with you before, but as you know, whenever you create a TIF area, all the assessed value that's there currently, we call that the base assessed value. You don't capture that. All that assessed value stays with the tax base of the overlapping tax units and helps fund the budgets of the town, the county, the school, library, and that's that gray area. And then any new growth in assessed value, the green, is what you capture. And the taxes generated from that new growth is what you collect in the form of TIF and help fund your projects and pay off your bonds. And then once the area ends, or you don't need all that TIF or assessed value, you can pass that through and it's added to the tax base. And that's that blue rectangle at the end. So as what you guys have done, since the 1990s, you've captured your increment, you've invested it back into the area, and now it's grown. So instead of just collecting, $500,000, $1 million like you did a decade ago, now you're collecting $2 and almost $3 million. So it's kind of a long-term invest that you just keep investing in itself. So the goal is, right now you're capturing $150 million. You keep investing back into the area. In 2039, when the area ends, you won't have $150 million you can pass through, but I hope it's like $300 million that you can pass through. But if you turn the page, with what we know now, you're capturing $150 million. So if you look at that box at the kind of the middle of the schedule, you can see the current tax rate of $1.93 for the town of Mooresville times the captured assessed value of $150 million, less the circuit breaker. That generates $2,915,000. So that's once all your abatements roll off. Again, this is just what's there in the ground now, but after your abatements roll off, you'd capture about $2,915,000. And that happens in about 2028, I believe. Above that box, that's the current situation. So again, the town of Mooresville, which is made up of the county, the town, the school, and the library. You can see the various tax rates right there of each of the different units. And then you can see the tax base, and then you can see the property tax levy. So if you look at the town of Mooresville, kind of the middle there, the very first town of Mooresville line, you can see the $2,633,533. That's the budget, the town's budget that's payable from property taxes. Now, we've assumed all of these units are at their maximum levy. Town is at their maximum levy. So the town cannot levy any more property taxes. They're maxed out by the state. So based upon that $2.6 million budget and the $496 million tax base, the town needs to levy a tax rate of 53 cents to pay for that budget, to fund that budget. And then we've done that for all the different units within the town of Mooresville taxing district. So if you go to scenario 2, we're showing keeping everything else the same. Once the TIF area ends and you could no longer capture that $150 million and you have to pass it through, what would that look like? So if you again go to that same line for Mooresville, again, the town can't increase its budget anymore, payable from property taxes. It's maxed out by the state. So you keep that the same, the $2,633,000. But now the tax base has gone from $496 million to $647 million, because now that $150 million that the redevelopment commission, you guys are capturing, now goes to the tax base of the town. So to fund that same budget with a higher tax base, now the town only needs to levy a tax rate of 40 cents. So about 13 cents less. There are a couple funds where new assessed value, the town and the county would actually see additional revenue, and that's in your cum cap funds. So if you add $150 million in the town's cum cap fund, you can see in the far right, they would generate an extra $64,000. And the county would generate an additional $43,000. So again, assuming all of the units are at their maximum levy, you can see adding $150 million to the tax base would generate about an extra $108,000 for the county and the school, the county and the town, and decrease tax rates by 26 cents. But then the redevelopment commission and the town would no longer be capturing $2.9 million in revenue for TIF. So this, and I've mentioned this every year, but I feel like this schedule is important because a lot of people misunderstand by you capturing this assessed value and not dollars, because I think if you, in the TIF area, you pass through assessed value, the other units are going to generate or collect a lot more revenue, a lot more dollars. And again, you're not capturing dollars, you're capturing assessed value, so once you pass that through, it just reduces tax rates, assuming everyone's at their maximum levy. So I'd be happy to, that fulfills your requirement of your annual meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But again, your TIF area is doing well, it's successful, growing and doing what it's supposed to do. I think, the school coming in front of you last year and then you providing some benefit to them, I think is a win-win for everyone, and it shows a great example how TIF should be working. You're doing it for infrastructure, shell buildings, water, sewer, but then also giving it to the other units. So.
Any questions for Jason or Baker Tilly?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Justin, if I could just comment.
Absolutely.
The commission, what Jason was talking about, the investment that the commission made in the schools, was certainly appreciated. Our Acre Science program has expanded and grown. I think, Brian, you come over and visit, I believe. We've got a really nice system in there, some hydroponics, and so we're real pleased with the direction we're going, plus the direction that the commission's going with the school. You're now walking hand in hand with us, and that's what we appreciate.
Thank you. We need a motion to accept the report.
Yeah, one hundred.
If the commission will allow, if I could get a motion to accept the annual report for the record, please.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second by Vice President Perry. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, old business, Mooresville Business Center update. Chelsea.
There are quite a few updates going on. I put a lot of them in the written report. Mark Butler is actually here with Banning Engineering this evening. We had a call last week with Kreider and Kreider. I'm glad you're here. They really don't want paid, do they? Like you can, thank you. Okay, I'm not lying. They really don't want paid because we still don't have a pay app for them, their final pay app. So there's still a couple outstanding issues, not very many, most of which was on my list. The trees, the asphalt seam repair, the grading, the plantings, those have been completed. The only thing that is remaining is the repair of the sewer. So there was, they were supposed to be on site this past week. And it was just too wet for them to perform the work. So they'll be out there, I think next week is the goal, when things dry up, to repair that sewer line. I am hopeful that we'll have the final payoff in June.
Most likely, their intent is to look at all to the end and finish out everything again. So, just keep in mind that the same company is doing a lot of work on I-69 right now, and so they're very busy. But they are being very responsive in getting these items done, so we appreciate it. However, it is not incorrect that they would rather just consolidate their accounting effort as a one pay app, and so that's why they've been fine with just putting it to the end.
I'd much rather them do the work and not get paid than try to get paid and not do the work. So I'll take this approach.
They have done more work than they have been paid for.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah. Any questions on Merriman and Bethel? Okay. Next up is the Shell building. I sound like a broken record, but I hope May is the month. Had a call with Chris King actually earlier today. So, and I did put this in the report. The steel delays due to COVID is one of the biggest issues we're facing. So, steel is needed for the northern portion of the windows going in. And so we just can't get the steel. He doesn't have a timeline. Unfortunately, every time they get a timeline, it's not been met. So he's just as frustrated as I know we all are at this point. Everyone wants to see the finished look. But unfortunately, COVID has caused delays that are out of our control and out of his control. So they do intend to paint. Again, they need some good days, but not just consecutive good days. Part of the issue, and I asked this today, is that the ground's just been too wet. Even if we've had a few decent weather days, the ground's been too wet for the trucks to drive around without basically destroying everything and requiring grading all over again. It's just been too wet. So he is, I'm going to say, cautiously optimistic. He was far more optimistic that May's the month, but I feel like I've said that to you now for 2 months, and weather's not cooperated thus far. So hopefully this is the month. They were on site today, and they are pouring the docks next week. So there is some movement. Again, hopeful. Chris is maybe even more frustrated than we are, Chris King with Redevelopment at this point. So he is trying his hardest, but to some extent, weather just hasn't cooperated, and neither has COVID has not helped. So I also had a call with our broker and the Redevelopment team. We do have some leads, so nothing substantial at this point, but traction is a good thing. So, and having something to market is an even better thing, which we did not have in the past. So, Happy to answer any questions about the Shell building.
Chelsea, do we know when that steel was ordered and from where?
I do not know that. I can ask that
Did you
question.
find that out?
I can ask the question, yeah.
I mean, if it's coming from China, I mean, we may be in trouble.
I can certainly ask the question. I mean, I will say, I mean, again, I know it's incredibly frustrating. We are not the only job that's seeing this. I mean, there's delays everywhere.
Yeah.
Not making excuses. It's incredibly frustrating. It should have been done.
If
but-
you'd get that
Yeah,
for me,
yep,
I'd
I will do that.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chelsea on the Shell building? Nice back update.
Yeah, I can take this one. So, earlier in April, after our previous April meeting, we had a call with NICEPAC and their representatives. So they are working through a lot of their business decisions, like, design and all of the logistics and nuance of, actually building all of the project. They have a consultant's report, I think, coming in June. Is that right, Chelsea?
Yes.
And then after that, they should be able to provide a much firmer timeline and closing date. Yep, that's it on NICEPAC. Does anybody have any questions?
So what was the original closing date, or did we have one?
We've never had one.
We've never had one? Okay.
Right. As you can imagine, $160 million takes a while to organize and make sure
sure.
that
I'm sure.
the footprint of the building and everything else.
Any questions for Adam regarding NICEPAC? Bond refunding update.
So Jason hit on all the big points during the presentation. The bond resolution that you adopted at the last meeting was sold and we closed this morning. So moving forward, we on an annual basis save roughly $75,000 a year, so that bond is sold. I appreciate everybody that came down to sign documents, Brian, Dustin, clerk treasurer, town council president, everybody came and signed dozens of documents, so we are all officially closed, and thank you for the opportunity to be of service, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I will just add, I think the only remaining invoice we have, we did not get the Bank of New York, correct? So we'll get that. So there'll be one more outstanding invoice that will be paid from bond proceeds at our June meeting. But everything else is on tonight's docket.
Next item, new business. There is no new business. Next item after that, legal update.
So the legislative session ended, and I circulated and printed out a summary of the legislative changes that affect redevelopment commissions. Some of it affects local governments units in general. Not a whole lot for redevelopment commissions this session. The legislature clarified that, no pancake tips are allowed. It's generally when one redevelopment commission has a allocation area and another adopts another allocation area on top. They've disallowed those. I'm only aware of one existing in the state, but that doesn't mean there are going to be many more. The June 15 report that we have, there's a slight change to that, and that is that we currently are responsible for uploading that report to the DLGF's website. Starting with next year's report, the county auditor will have that responsibility. So that's just a technical compliance thing that this moves the responsibility to them, because we actually don't have access to Gateway to upload things, the commission doesn't. There are some other changes, some of the bond laws. Most importantly, there are new rules regarding electronic participation in meetings. My speculation is that due to COVID and how well a lot of municipalities sort of transition to participating electronically, they have adopted statute allowing that to move forward, provided that you comply with all the requirements. I'll be talking to the town council attorney to see what the town council's plans are and what their policies are going to be as well. If you guys are interested in adopting a similar policy or having one at all, we can definitely work on that. That is the end of my legal update. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Adam? Any interest on sending him to write a policy so we can electronically participate?
Yeah, I think it says the governing body must adopt a written policy, so I don't think we have any.
Yes, if you want to do that in the future, we need a written policy.
I would make a motion that we have council write and that we adopt a written policy relating to electronic participation of our meetings.
I would second that motion.
A motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Nay? Motion passes. Boy, that was fast. Everybody wants to take a vacation and join. Managerial update, Chelsea?
I've touched on most of it. I did just want to touch on, there's been a lot of talk about the trees that were removed on High Street. I know we had a gentleman come to our last meeting who had asked some questions. I did a little bit of additional digging from NDOT, and so I wanted to provide that update. This is per NDOT's engineer. On the north side of High Street, 7 trees were to be removed. 2 of those trees were at the property in the northeast corner of Monroe Street, so the house that NDOT took down. The remaining 5 trees between the curb and the sidewalk that need to be removed to make room for the shared use path. So we're down to 5 trees on the north side that we're talking about at this point. The 3 trees located between Jefferson and Indiana Streets would have been removed due to the same reasons as the ones on the south side were, which I'm going to dive into those south side ones in just a second here. The 2 trees east of Indiana Street, opposite of the funeral home, probably could have remained if we did not do the shared use path. They were relatively small and the grass buffer in that area is flat, so minimal grading would have been needed. On the south side of High Street, 8 trees were to be removed. Those trees are too close to where the new curb line needs to go in order to remain. The contractor would have had to remove portions of the tree trunk near the ground line to make space to construct the curb, and it would have not been safe to keep such a severely damaged tree in place. On the north side, there will only be a couple feet of grass area between the new shared use path and the right-of-way line, so there is not room to plant new trees. On the south side, it would not be desirable to plant new trees in the grass strip. The grass strip is not an ideal location for trees since it blocks sight lines and causes future maintenance issues. The best solution would be for the property owners to plant trees between their homes and the sidewalks. This would be on private property and less likely to be impacted by future maintenance of utility companies or NDOT contractors. I again just want to reiterate that this is NDOT's project. We have a memorandum of understanding with them in which the 3 aspects that we funded were the shared use path, which the shared use path is identical to what is on the east side of Indiana Street. It's basically a glorified sidewalk. It is a wider sidewalk so that a bike can come and go at the same time and you're not gonna wreck into each other essentially. It's just a wider sidewalk. NDOT was not going to include lighting, so we have lighting, which is the exact same lighting that's on Indiana Street. And on the south side, again, they were going to replace these 4 squares of sidewalk and not those 5 and those 4 and not those 6. So we said, please replace them all. And they said, okay, but you have to pay for it. So those are the 3 things that this body, the Redevelopment Commission, approved. NDOT then bid the project, sent us a bill for those 3 things. We wrote NDOT a check. I think that was either December or January of this year. And that's really the extent of our involvement in that. I'm happy to answer questions. But really, that's the extent of what I know, as far as the trees are concerned on High Street.
Any questions?
I just have some comments. You provided us with a copy of the MOU between the town of Mooresville and the Redevelopment Commission, and it was signed December 18, 2019, by the town council president and at that time, the redevelopment president. And on page 7 of the 23 pages, it says in E, after the initial construction of the new sidewalk, if the town seeks to construct or install additional improvements for or related to the new sidewalk upon, across, or within NDOT right-of-way, prior to such construction or installation, the town shall submit a design plan to the NDOT Conferenceville District for review and approval. So does that mean that maybe we can go back? I know there's been a big issue with the trees. Does that mean at some time after this is all finished, because it says after the initial construction, we can maybe go back and put some trees in if there's room to do that? We have that option, as long as they approve it. That's what I read in this page 7, down to in E. That's just, you can check and see if that's possible.
NDOT would definitely have to approve. They made a decision to remove certain trees, so I would imagine that putting those back is not an option, like where they were.
Well, in the original MOU, I went through this and read this, the word trees is not in here, period.
Right.
Nowhere. So it was never considered to begin with, apparently,
Well,
the removal of trees.
Any project by the town or the commission or anybody in an NDOT right away has to get their approval.
Absolutely.
So, and that section is basically a regurgitation of what's sort of already understood and required. So if utilities needed to go in there, we'd have to go and get NDOT
Right.
approval.
Right.
You know, if the town wanted to put up a stoplight or something else somewhere, you'd have to get NDOT approval. So it is all subject to their discretion.
Yeah, but it's a possibility according to this. I mean, that's the way I read it, unless council sees it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's just it's up to them on what
Right.
they'll
But
approve.
it's something we could approach them about. It's not it's not out of the realm of maybe having that done sometime down the road after the initial construction is complete. That we can go to them and say, we'd like to do this, can we do this, and will you approve it? I know NDOT
Right.
has the final say, there's no question about that. And I just, on another, page 17 of 23, in 4.37 in the public record, I found this interesting. That the town acknowledges that the state will not treat this agreement as containing confidential information and will post this agreement on its website as required by Executive Order 05-07. So this is a matter of public record. I mean, this MOU can be, anybody can get this if they make a public record request. Am I correct in that? Okay. Okay. That's all I have.
And I think her questions answered some of mine. I was just wondering, you know, at this point, I mean, is there anything that can be done, or is, I guess from what she was reading, we have to finish and then go back? Is that the case? If we want to do something?
Yes, I mean, if you want to do anything in NDOT's right away, you got to sort of get their approval, just like if a homeowner wants to do something in the town's right away, they have to get town's approval.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask the question, you know, what possibilities might there be that we could improve the situation? Just because it has been such a hot button in the town, you know? And I think a lot of people's impression of this board is that we're not listening. So I just want to say, you know,
I agree.
Are there any options out there that we could pursue?
Yeah, I mean, NDOT mentioned that the best option is for those property owners in that area to plant their trees on their property and outside of that right of way. And that's the best option according to NDOT. So I'm assuming that's what if we asked again, that's probably what they're gonna say. And I mean, the trees on the south side of the street were removed
They were removed on the south side because they are too close to where the new curb line needs to go in order to remain. The contract would have to have removed portions of the tree trunks near the ground line to make space to construct the curb, and it would not be safe. Sorry, lost my train here. It would not be safe to keep such a severely damaged tree in place. On the south side, it would not be desirable to plant new trees in the grass strip. It's not an ideal location for trees since it blocks sight lines and causes future maintenance issues.
Did you see it?
With that, I just want to, I mean, there are certain, I guess I see trees planted in those grass strips all the time, you know, and even our other gateway projects have trees. I think, you know, maybe a select species of tree that's not as invasive, something like that.
I'm not an engineer or designer, I couldn't tell you what they could or can't do, but I would imagine where the trees were removed, unless you replace them with something much smaller, I mean, would not, I don't know how varying of width that grass strip is to the south side in other areas.
Right.
But
And I will say also, I think part of the issue is the location of utilities. I think another thing to keep in mind, and I do whatever this body tells me to do, so you tell me what to do and I will do it. But on Indiana Street, I mean, we're talking about High Street is residential primarily, right? Where there's a lot less right of way. I mean, it's, you know, curb, we're talking about 2 feet of grass, sidewalk, and a home, 10, 15 feet. Indiana, especially further south on Indiana, you know, it's much more commercial. And again, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an architect. That's what our design firm said there was room for, given what they knew about where the utilities were and right-of-ways were, and so that's why trees are there, and not saying there's not room. I mean, if we want to have that conversation, I will again have the conversation, but I did ask this month, and the response was, we cannot put it to the north. We cannot put them to the north because there will only be a couple feet of grass between the new shared use path and the right-of-way line, the curb, and it's not desirable to the south. But I can push again if that's what this body wants to see.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I'm not sure what they mean when they say on the south side it would not be desirable. I mean, desirable to who? Them or us, or desirable to who?
When they say it's not desirable, the two reasons they gave were it blocks sight lines and causes future maintenance issues.
Yeah, but that's in the next sentence. So if you would approach them, you know, and let them know our concern about the tree situation and the backlash that we've received from the public, which is who we represent. I appreciate it.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Next item on the agenda, the review of claims.
I would make a motion that we accept the claims in the amount of $182,010.26.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. For the good of the order, Commissioner Heinrich,
No, I have nothing.
Commissioner Taylor.
Just one thing to touch on, for the timeline for that project to be complete, going back to the trees, I think it'll also help once everything is laid. And I know sometimes doing projects, you take things out for ease of equipment access and things like that. I think that'll help give everyone a clear picture and what can be planted where once it's all set and laid. Do they have a timeline?
It's end of next year.
End of next year?
Yeah.
The next year.
Yeah.
I think that'll help, and working with NDOT, obviously we've had lots of concerns from lots of people. Maybe if we can put a timeline down on when we revisit this issue so we don't do something too soon that has to get taken out later. That's it.
Nothing. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Vice President Perry?
I have nothing further, thank you.
All righty, I definitely agree with Ryan Taylor, or Commissioner Taylor. Looking at this maybe in the future, especially the end of next year, coincidentally the end of my term. If we can push it to 2022, that'd be fantastic. No, I think that makes sense to me. And definitely as a council member, I've seen the emails about the trees, a lot of emails the last few days, kind of, but we need to take everything in stride, so.
Absolutely.
All right, our next meeting date is June 3rd. Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Hey, thank you.
I'll second it.
Fantastic. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.